The sun had barely risen, but the office tower was already bustling with activity. In the top floors, the hum of computers, ringing phones, and the shuffle of expensive shoes on polished floors filled the air. The CEO, a man known for his sharp mind and sharper tongue, had just arrived. His reputation was well known, not only for the company he ran, but for his tendency to tease and challenge those around him, often for his own amusement. Today, he seemed to be in a particularly playful mood. Among the people working quietly in the office was a young maid. She moved with practiced grace, carrying her cleaning supplies and gliding through the halls with a calm that contrasted sharply with the hurried movements of executives and assistants. Everyone knew her for her gentle nature and quiet intelligence, though few stopped to think beyond her role. She had been working in the building for years, taking pride in her work and always maintaining dignity, no matter the circumstances. The maid had a morning routine she followed to the letter. She started with the lobby, making sure every surface was spotless, then moved to the elevators, polishing handles until they gleamed. She enjoyed the small victories in her work, the satisfaction of leaving a place cleaner than she had found it. Even in a world that often overlooked her, she found meaning in her tasks. She believed that respect came not from titles or money, but from how one carried oneself and treated others. Meanwhile, the CEO was gathering a few of his closest executives in his office. The atmosphere was light, full of laughter and casual banter. It was common for him to show off his wit and intelligence, sometimes in ways that bordered on arrogance. Today, he seemed particularly keen on entertaining himself, scanning the room for a new way to provoke a reaction. That was when his eyes fell on the maid, who was quietly dusting a corner of the room. A smirk appeared on his face. He waved her over, not with any sense of urgency, but with the intention of making a game out of the situation. The executives, curious about the CEO's sudden attention, looked on, their expressions a mix of amusement and expectation. They were used to these moments where someone lower in the hierarchy would be pulled into the CEO's playful tests. The maid approached cautiously, aware that the attention she received was not typical. She had learned over time how to navigate these moments, how to maintain composure without overstepping boundaries. As she neared the CEO, he leaned back in his chair and spoke with a tone that suggested a joke more than a serious request. He asked her if she knew how to play chess. There was a brief pause. The executives exchanged glances, some smirking, clearly expecting a humorous answer or perhaps anticipating her embarrassment. The CEO's voice carried a mix of amusement and challenge, as if he were daring her to respond. The maid, however, simply nodded. She had learned the game years ago from an old neighbor and enjoyed the strategic thinking it demanded. She rarely had the chance to play, but she knew the rules and the basic strategies well enough. The room reacted with subtle surprise. No one had expected her to know the game. The CEO's smirk widened, perhaps thinking she would only pretend, only to entertain the executives with a laugh at her expense. Yet there was something in her calm demeanor that made him pause for a moment, though he quickly dismissed the thought and gestured for her to sit across from him at a small table in the center of the office. The table had been used before for meetings, and now it became the stage for what was meant to be a playful display. The chessboard was set up, pieces perfectly arranged awaiting the first moves. The executives gathered around, some leaning casually, others with barely hidden anticipation. They whispered among themselves, speculating about what would happen, some assuming the game would be a quick, entertaining defeat for the maid. The maid sat down, her posture straight and hands folded calmly in front of her. She glanced at the chessboard, noting the positions of the pieces, thinking ahead to the possible strategies she could employ. The CEO, on the other hand, moved his pieces confidently, making opening moves that displayed both experience and a hint of showmanship. He was used to impressing people with his intellect, and today he intended to do just that. As the game began, the room's energy shifted slightly. What started as casual amusement turned into genuine curiosity. The maid made her moves carefully, deliberately, showing an understanding of strategy that many in the room had underestimated. She did not rush, she did not fidget, and she certainly did not show any sign of nervousness. Each move she made drew subtle reactions from the onlookers, raised eyebrows, whispers, and a few stunned silences. The CEO noticed the change in atmosphere. His smirk faltered slightly as he realized the maid was not only competent, but also thoughtful, anticipating his tactics in a way that caught him off guard. He chuckled, trying to maintain his playful facade, but the amusement in his eyes had shifted to a mix of respect and surprise. He had underestimated her, a mistake that he rarely made. The executives watched closely, some shifting in their seats, others leaning forward. The maid's quiet confidence created a tension that was different from the usual office dynamics. Here was someone without a title, without a corporate position, yet her presence commanded attention. It was a subtle reminder that intelligence and skill are not bound by roles or appearances. Outside the immediate focus of the game, the building continued its daily rhythm. The hum of elevators, distant conversations, and the occasional ring of a phone created a backdrop to this unusual scene. Yet for those gathered around the chessboard, the world seemed to shrink to the moves, the strategies, and the silent exchange of understanding between two minds. As the morning progressed, the maid continued to play with precision and calm. The CEO's initial confidence began to waver as he noticed patterns and traps he had not anticipated. The executives leaned in, their expressions shifting from amusement to genuine intrigue. They had come expecting a joke, a moment of light entertainment, and instead, they were witnessing something far more compelling, a demonstration of intelligence, poise, and strategic thinking from someone they had underestimated. The maid remained composed throughout. She did not boast, she did not gloat. Her focus was entirely on the game, each move considered, each decision deliberate. In her mind, this was not about proving herself to anyone, but about the joy of the game and the satisfaction of doing her best. Yet unknowingly, she was teaching a lesson that extended far beyond the chessboard. By the time the first hour had passed, it was clear to everyone in the room that this game was not going to end quickly or predictably. The CEO, usually in full control of any room he entered, felt a rare sense of challenge. He found himself analyzing, reconsidering, and even questioning his usual strategies. The executives, too, were captivated, realizing that the outcome was no longer certain. In this simple office, a small act, a chess game between a CEO and a maid, was quietly shifting perceptions. It highlighted the power of focus, intelligence, and calm under pressure. It reminded everyone present that appearances can be deceiving, that talent and skill are not confined to titles or positions, and that respect is earned through action, not assumed through status. The morning continued with subtle tension, laughter mingling with concentration, and a shared sense of anticipation. The maid's moves were precise, thoughtful, and occasionally surprising. Each time she made a move, it became clear that she was not just participating, she was influencing the game, challenging assumptions and commanding attention in a way that no one had expected. By the end of the morning, the scene was set for something remarkable. The stage was ready for a move that would stun everyone, a moment that would redefine the way those in the room viewed intelligence, humility, and skill. The CEO had invited a maid to play chess as a joke, but what was unfolding was anything but a joke. It was a quiet demonstration of talent, dignity, and the unexpected ways people can shine when given the chance. And for the maid, it was simply another morning, another challenge, and another opportunity to show, through calm action and thoughtful strategy, that true skill cannot be measured by role or appearance alone. The maid sat quietly at the table, her eyes fixed on the chessboard, studying the pieces as if each one held a secret she needed to uncover. The CEO leaned back in his chair, smiling confidently, convinced that the game would provide him with entertainment. The executives had gathered around, their whispers barely audible, expecting a light-hearted display of superiority. They were about to discover that appearances could be deceiving. The CEO made the first move, advancing a pawn with a flourish, clearly intending to signal both his skill and his authority. The maid responded carefully, moving her own pawn in a way that countered his strategy. She did not rush, nor did she react to the subtle smirks of the executives or the playful tone in the CEO's voice. Her focus was absolute, her mind mapping out possibilities several moves ahead. The executives began to watch more closely. Some leaned forward, their expressions a mixture of surprise and curiosity. The maid's calm demeanor and precise moves were already challenging the assumptions they had made about her abilities. Whispers floated through the room as people quietly debated whether she really knew what she was doing. The CEO, noticing the subtle shift in the room's energy, raised an eyebrow. He had expected her to make mistakes, to play without strategy, but her opening moves were thoughtful, careful, and effective. A hint of respect crossed his face, though he quickly covered it with a chuckle, maintaining his playful facade. As the game continued, the maid demonstrated an understanding of the board that seemed unusual for someone in her position. Each move she made was deliberate, designed to anticipate the CEO's strategy and counteract it. The executives, initially expecting a short, entertaining game, now found themselves captivated by the unfolding match. They whispered among themselves, acknowledging her intelligence in hushed tones. The CEO attempted to maintain control, moving pieces aggressively, hoping to unsettle her. He made a series of quick, confident moves, but she remained composed, calmly responding to each challenge. Her strategy began to reveal itself as more than mere defense. She was subtly shaping the game, guiding it into a territory where she could create opportunities. The tension in the room grew. The executives leaned in, some biting their lips, others nodding in silent admiration. They realized that this game was not going as expected, and their amusement was slowly giving way to genuine respect. The maid's quiet intelligence was commanding attention without a word, and the CEO, usually the center of authority and amusement, was beginning to sense that he had underestimated her. A moment came when the CEO moved his knight in a bold attempt to corner her queen. He expected her to falter, to react quickly without thought. Instead, the maid paused, studying the board carefully, weighing the possibilities in her mind. Then she moved her bishop in a way that not only saved her queen, but also threatened his rook. The executives gasped softly, some exchanging stunned looks as the unexpected move caught everyone by surprise. The CEO leaned back, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He had underestimated her ability to see beyond the obvious, to think several steps ahead. For the first time, he realized that the game was not going to be a simple display of his skill. The maid was not just keeping up. She was challenging him in ways he had not anticipated. As the game progressed, the maid's confidence grew. She did not gloat or show arrogance. She remained calm, focused on each move. The CEO's initial playful attitude began to fade, replaced by genuine concentration and a hint of admiration. The executives, too, were captivated, recognizing that the maid's presence had altered the dynamic in the room entirely. The board became a battlefield of strategy and foresight. Each piece moved with intention, and each decision carried weight. The maid anticipated threats, created opportunities, and forced the CEO to reconsider his usual tactics. He attempted a series of aggressive moves, but she countered each one with subtle precision, demonstrating an understanding of the game that was both surprising and impressive. The executives watched in awe, realizing that the lesson unfolding before them was about more than chess. It was about perception, about the assumptions people make based on roles and appearances. The maid, by simply playing the game with skill and calm determination, was challenging long-held biases and teaching a quiet but powerful lesson. Time seemed to slow as the game reached a critical stage. The CEO moved his queen aggressively, aiming to dominate the center of the board. The maid responded with careful calculation, moving her knight in a way that protected her position while creating new threats. The executives held their breath, sensing that something remarkable was about to happen. The CEO's confidence wavered. He realized that his usual tactics, the ones that had worked so reliably in office games and casual matches, were being outmaneuvered. The maid's strategic thinking was evident in every move, and her ability to anticipate and adapt was both impressive and humbling. The room's atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The executives were no longer just observers. They were participants in a shared experience of surprise and admiration. The maid's quiet brilliance had captured their attention, and the CEO's playful demeanor had shifted to one of cautious respect. The game was no longer about entertainment. It was a genuine contest of skill and intellect. As the morning turned into early afternoon, the game continued with increasing intensity. The CEO, who had started the match with playful confidence, was now deeply engaged, analyzing each potential move and counter-move. The maid remained composed, her focus unwavering, her mind mapping out strategies with clarity and foresight. The executives whispered among themselves, acknowledging her skill and noting the CEO's uncharacteristic seriousness. They realized that the game had become a moment of learning, not just in chess but in humility and recognition of talent. The maid, through her calm and thoughtful play, was demonstrating that intelligence and capability are not determined by status or appearance. Each move brought new surprises. The CEO attempted to corner her king, believing he had set a trap that would be impossible to escape. The maid, however, saw the opening he had overlooked and moved her rook with precision, turning the situation in her favor. Gasps and murmurs of admiration spread through the room, as the executives recognized the depth of her understanding. The CEO's expression shifted from amusement to genuine intrigue. He had underestimated her, and now he was forced to rethink his strategy. The executives, too, were learning a lesson in perception and respect. The maid's quiet confidence and intelligence were undeniable, and the room had been transformed from a scene of casual amusement into a moment of genuine revelation. As the game reached its midpoint, the dynamics in the room had completely changed. The maid had earned the attention and respect of everyone present, not through words or status, but through her skill, focus, and calm determination. The CEO, usually in control of every situation, was now fully engaged in a battle of wits, realizing that his opponent, a maid he had invited as a joke, was a formidable player. The executives leaned in closer, some taking notes in their minds about strategy, others simply observing in awe. They had expected a light-hearted diversion, but they were witnessing a quiet demonstration of intelligence, patience, and skill. The maid's presence had challenged assumptions, and her performance was a reminder that true talent often comes from unexpected places. The board was now a complex landscape of possibilities. The CEO, moving cautiously, tried to regain the upper hand, but each attempt was met with careful counterplay. The maid anticipated threats, created opportunities, and maintained a calm, steady rhythm that contrasted sharply with the CEO's occasional bursts of aggression. The executives were silent now, fully absorbed in the unfolding match. The usual chatter and laughter had faded, replaced by a sense of respect and admiration. The maid's quiet intelligence was commanding attention, and the CEO's playful confidence had given way to serious focus. The game had become a lesson in strategy, humility, and recognition of skill. As the afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, the game continued with intensity and grace. Each move brought new challenges and opportunities, and the maid's thoughtful play kept the CEO on his toes. The executives, initially expecting a simple joke, had become witnesses to a remarkable display of intelligence and composure. By the time the second part of the game had unfolded, it was clear to everyone present that this was not just a chess match. It was a moment that highlighted the importance of looking beyond appearances, of valuing skill and intelligence regardless of status, and of recognizing that true respect is earned through action and ability rather than position. The maid's calm focus, strategic thinking, and quiet confidence had transformed a playful joke into a profound lesson. The CEO, for the first time in a long while, felt challenged in a way that was humbling yet invigorating. The executives, too, had their perceptions shifted, realizing that talent and intelligence could come from the most unexpected sources. The room remained tense but captivated, the chessboard a small stage on which a remarkable story was unfolding. The maid's skill, patience, and poise were evident in every move, and the CEO's growing respect was visible in his careful consideration of each play. The executives watched in silence, absorbing the lesson being demonstrated in real time. The game had reached a point where each move mattered more than ever, and the anticipation of what would come next hung in the air. The maid, calm and focused, continued to play with thoughtful precision, her mind mapping out possibilities and preparing for the moment that could change everything. The CEO, fully engaged, was forced to recognize that he was facing a worthy opponent, one whose intelligence and skill could not be underestimated. The atmosphere in the office had shifted completely. What had begun as a playful joke was now a lesson in respect, perception, and the quiet power of skill and intelligence. The maid's performance had captivated everyone, and the CEO's amusement had turned into genuine challenge and admiration. The stage was set for the next part of the story, where a move would stun everyone and solidify the lesson that talent is not defined by title, role, or appearance. The room was quiet now, the usual buzz of conversation replaced by the soft sound of chess pieces moving across the board. The maid sat with a calm expression, her eyes scanning the pieces, calculating NTC. In that quiet office, surrounded by the hum of work and distant conversations, a remarkable lesson was unfolding. The maid's intelligence, patience, and composure had transformed a casual joke into a compelling demonstration of skill. The executives and the CEO alike were learning that true talent cannot be measured by appearance, role, or expectation. It is revealed in action, in focus, and in the ability to anticipate, adapt, and respond with grace and precision. The room was silent, except for the faint clicks of chess pieces moving on the board. The tension had built steadily, from playful amusement to quiet amazement, and now every eye in the room was fixed on the table in the center. The maid sat calmly, her hands resting lightly on her lap, her eyes sharp and focused, her mind working through possibilities and calculating each outcome with precision. The CEO, once confident and playful, now studied the board with serious intensity, fully aware that his usual strategies might no longer apply. Earlier in the game, he had tried several aggressive moves, each meant to corner her or catch her off guard. Each time she had responded not with haste, but with careful consideration, countering threats and sometimes creating subtle advantages. Her strategy was quiet, almost invisible at first, but unmistakable in its effect. Every piece she moved was deliberate, building towards something the others could not yet see. The executives, who had gathered expecting a moment of light-hearted humor, were now fully captivated. Their whispers had ceased, replaced by a collective focus on the unfolding match. They leaned in slightly, their eyes scanning the board as though trying to predict the next move before it happened. None of them had seen a display quite like this in the office before. The CEO shifted in his chair, repositioning himself to better view the board. He moved his knight forward, thinking to apply pressure to her pieces and regain control. His movements were precise, reflecting years of experience and a competitive mind honed over countless games. Yet the maid, calm and composed, anticipated the attack almost before it was made. She adjusted her position slightly, moving her bishop into place to protect her queen while creating a subtle threat of her own. The executives exchanged glances, some nodding slowly. Recognizing the depth of her understanding, they could see that she was not reacting out of fear or haste, but was instead orchestrating her own strategy, influencing the game in ways that forced even the CEO to reconsider his approach. Each subtle movement of her pieces changed the dynamics, challenging assumptions and prompting new calculations. The CEO made another move, this time advancing his queen aggressively, thinking he had discovered a potential weakness. The maid paused, her eyes scanning the board with calm intensity. She considered the implications of each possible response, calculating outcomes several moves ahead. Finally, she made her move. It was precise and subtle, not flashy, but devastating in its strategic significance. She positioned her knight in a way that created an immediate threat to his queen, while simultaneously protecting her own key pieces. A hush fell over the room. The executives leaned forward, eyes wide as they processed the unexpected shift. The CEO froze for a moment, blinking in surprise. He had anticipated control over the board, expected to dictate the pace of the game, yet her move had turned the tables in a single, elegant stroke. The room seemed to hold its breath. The impact of her move was immediate. The CEO realized that his queen was vulnerable, trapped in a position where escape would require careful consideration and a concession of some advantage. He moved slowly, deliberating, recalculating the implications of her strategy. The executives whispered softly, their amazement barely contained. They had witnessed a display of intelligence and foresight that defied expectations, a lesson in patience and strategic thinking. The maid remained calm, her demeanor unchanged. She did not celebrate, she did not react to the astonished expressions around her. For her, this was simply the next step in the game, the natural consequence of careful planning and thoughtful execution. Yet her quiet confidence sent a clear message to everyone in the room. Skill and intellect are not bound by role, appearance, or social position. The CEO's playful arrogance had faded entirely. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, and studied the board with renewed focus. He realized that he had underestimated her from the beginning, assuming that her role as a maid implied a lack of knowledge or capability. Now he was faced with a mind as sharp and strategic as his own, requiring all his attention and respect. The executives watched in silence, captivated by the unfolding scene. They could see the subtlety and intelligence in each of her moves, the careful planning and foresight that guided her every action. Some of them felt a twinge of embarrassment for underestimating her, but admiration soon replaced it, as they recognized the rare skill she was demonstrating. The game continued with intensity. The CEO moved his rook, attempting to regain momentum and protect his remaining pieces. The maid responded with calm precision, shifting her queen slightly to apply pressure while safeguarding her strategic positions. The executives murmured softly among themselves, noting the complexity of her strategy and the composure she maintained throughout. It was clear that she was not just defending, she was controlling the pace and flow of the game, guiding it toward a position that could yield decisive results. Each movement of her pieces carried significance. The knight and bishop worked in tandem, the pawns positioned to protect and create opportunities. The executives were beginning to understand the subtle brilliance of her play. It was not about flashy tactics or sudden attacks. It was about control, foresight, and the ability to manipulate the board while maintaining balance and composure. The CEO realized that a misstep could be costly. He moved cautiously, analyzing each potential response and considering the broader implications. He had faced skilled opponents before, but few had challenged him in such a thoughtful, patient manner. He acknowledged silently that he had not only underestimated her skill but also the clarity and calm with which she executed her strategies. The executives continued to watch, fully absorbed in the game. The tension was palpable, every move scrutinized, every decision significant. The maid's performance was a masterclass in strategy, patience, and quiet confidence. Her ability to remain composed while subtly shifting the dynamics of the game was mesmerizing. The CEO, once the orchestrator of amusement and authority, now found himself in a rare position, challenged, surprised, and genuinely engaged. As the game reached its final stages, the maid prepared for the moment that would define the match. She had been setting the stage for this move for several turns, building her position quietly, methodically, without drawing attention to the impending breakthrough. Her strategy was precise. Every piece placed with intention, every potential threat accounted for. Then, with calm assurance, she made the move. It was subtle yet powerful, a placement of her rook that simultaneously threatened the CEO's queen and created a path for checkmate. The executives gasped softly, unable to hide their astonishment. The CEO leaned back in his chair, a flicker of awe and respect crossing his face. He had been outmaneuvered, caught by a move he had not anticipated, and yet it was executed with such elegance and restraint that it was impossible not to admire. For a moment, the room was silent. The hum of the office, the distant ringing of phones, the shuffling of papers, all seemed to fade away. All eyes were on the chessboard, witnessing a moment of brilliance and skill that transcended the ordinary dynamics of the office. The maid's calm demeanor and strategic foresight had transformed a playful challenge into a demonstration of intelligence, patience, and quiet power. The CEO studied the board, realizing that he had no immediate options to counter the threat. He acknowledged silently the skill and strategy that had led to this moment. The executives, too, recognized the significance of her play. They had come expecting a joke, a light-hearted diversion, and instead they were witnessing a display of talent, focus, and strategic thinking that challenged assumptions and commanded respect. The maid remained composed, her face calm, her focus steady. She did not revel in her success, did not allow pride to influence her actions. She had played the game with integrity, skill, and thoughtful foresight. The impact of her move, however, was undeniable. The CEO and the executives had learned a lesson in humility, recognition, and the value of intelligence over expectation. The executives whispered quietly among themselves, some nodding in appreciation, others reflecting on their initial assumptions. The CEO, usually confident and playful, now leaned forward with a thoughtful expression, analyzing his next moves with renewed respect for his opponent. The game had become more than entertainment. It was a lesson in perception, respect, and the quiet power of talent when it is nurtured and allowed to shine. The office was quiet, filled only with the soft breathing and occasional shifting of those who had gathered around the chessboard. The maid sat with calm dignity, her eyes on the pieces, her expression serene. The CEO leaned back in his chair, his usually confident posture softened by a newfound respect. Around them, the executives were silent, absorbed in reflection, their earlier amusement replaced by a mixture of awe and contemplation. The final moves had left the CEO's king vulnerable, his options limited by the careful strategy of the maid. He studied the board, considering possibilities, but it was clear that the game had shifted irrevocably. The executives, who had initially gathered expecting a light-hearted display, were now witnesses to a profound demonstration of intelligence, patience, and composure. The atmosphere was charged, as if everyone present recognized the significance of what had just occurred. The CEO finally exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath that seemed to release tension he hadn't realized he was holding. He nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, and allowed his king to be checked. The room remained quiet, the only sounds the subtle rustle of papers and the faint hum of computers. It was a moment that transcended the ordinary flow of office life, a rare instance of genuine respect and admiration, taking precedence over hierarchy and status. The executives looked at one another, some smiling faintly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. They had underestimated the maid from the start, assuming that her role limited her knowledge, her ability, and her potential. Yet through calm focus and strategic thinking, she had demonstrated not only skill at chess but a quiet intelligence that demanded recognition. It was a reminder that talent and capability often exist beyond social assumptions and preconceived notions. The CEO leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. He studied the board, his expression thoughtful. He had initiated the game as a joke, a playful diversion meant to amuse himself and his colleagues. Instead, he had been challenged, surprised, and ultimately humbled by someone he had expected to entertain them, rather than teach them a lesson. The realization settled in with a weight that was both humbling and enlightening. The maid remained composed, her posture calm, her hands folded lightly in front of her. She did not react to the astonishment or the sudden respect in the room. For her, the game had been about strategy, foresight, and the quiet satisfaction of doing her best. Yet without speaking a word, she had conveyed a lesson far beyond the chessboard, that intelligence and talent cannot be measured by role, appearance, or social expectation, and that dignity is found in calm confidence and focus. The executives began to reflect on their own assumptions. They had come to witness amusement, expecting a predictable outcome. Instead, they had been confronted with a demonstration that challenged their biases and highlighted the importance of looking beyond appearances. The lesson was clear, and the impact was subtle but undeniable. They realized that respect is earned through action and ability, not assumed by position or status. The CEO, still studying the board, finally spoke. His voice was measured, carrying a hint of admiration. He acknowledged her skill, admitting that he had underestimated her at the start. The executives listened carefully, recognizing the sincerity in his tone. It was a rare moment, a break from the usual dynamics of the office where hierarchy and humor often overshadowed genuine recognition. This time, the acknowledgement was authentic. The maid nodded slightly, accepting the recognition with grace. She did not boast or seek praise. Her demeanor remained calm and composed. Her focus had always been on the game, on strategy, and on doing her best. Yet through her actions, she had communicated far more than mere ability at chess. She had demonstrated that intelligence, patience, and composure are powerful tools that command respect, regardless of social standing. The executives began to speak quietly among themselves, reflecting on the game and the lesson it had provided. Some admitted to feeling surprised by the maid's skill. Others noted the subtlety and elegance of her strategy. They recognized that the lesson extended beyond chess, touching on respect, humility, and the importance of valuing people for their abilities rather than their roles. It was a moment of shared insight, a reminder that assumptions can often limit perception and understanding. The CEO's expression softened as he continued to consider the game. He realized that his initial intention had been entertainment, a playful test of someone he believed would amuse him. Yet he had been challenged, surprised, and ultimately enlightened. The experience had shifted his perspective, reminding him that talent can emerge from unexpected places and that respect must be earned, not assumed. It was a humbling realization, but one that carried lasting significance. The maid stood quietly, preparing to return to her duties. She moved with the same calm grace that had characterized her throughout the game. Her actions were deliberate, her demeanor composed, and her presence quietly commanding. The executives watched, a newfound respect evident in their expressions. They understood that they had witnessed something rare, a demonstration of intelligence, patience, and dignity that transcended social assumptions. As she walked away from the table, the room seemed to carry a subtle shift. The atmosphere, once lighthearted and playful, was now infused with reflection and respect. The CEO remained seated, studying the board, acknowledging the skill and foresight that had defined the game. The executives, too, were thoughtful, recognizing that the lesson extended beyond chess and into the realm of human interaction, perception, and respect. In the following moments, casual conversation resumed, but it carried a different tone. Laughter and chatter were replaced with quiet admiration and thoughtful observation. The game had left an indelible mark on the participants, a reminder that true skill and intelligence often lie beneath the surface, and that assumptions based on role or appearance can be misleading. The CEO, still reflecting on the game, approached the maid briefly. He offered a genuine smile, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement and respect. She nodded slightly in return, maintaining her calm composure. Their exchange was brief, but it carried the weight of understanding and recognition. In that moment, the hierarchy of the office seemed less important than the shared acknowledgement of skill and talent. The executives, inspired by the experience, began to consider how perception and assumptions affect their daily interactions. They realized that they often judged others based on superficial observations, missing the depth of intelligence, skill, and insight that can exist beyond appearances. The chess game had become more than a contest of strategy. It had become a mirror reflecting the values of humility, respect, and recognition of talent. The maid returned to her duties with quiet dignity, her actions unaffected by the attention she had garnered. Her focus remained on her work, her presence a calm and steady reminder that true confidence is demonstrated through action, not words. The CEO and executives watched, carrying the lesson forward, recognizing that respect and admiration are earned through consistent demonstration of skill, composure, and intelligence. The afternoon progressed, and the office resumed its usual rhythm, but the memory of the game lingered. The CEO found himself reflecting on the experience, considering the subtle but powerful lessons it had provided. He acknowledged silently the importance of humility, the value of recognizing talent regardless of status, and the enduring impact of thoughtful, strategic action. The executives shared quiet conversations, acknowledging the unexpected insights gained from the game. They spoke of patience, observation, and the quiet power of intellect. The maid's performance had created a lasting impression, one that extended beyond the chessboard and into the fabric of office life. It was a reminder that true skill and insight can emerge from anyone, regardless of position or expectation. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the office, the room seemed to carry a sense of calm reflection. The game had ended, but its impact remained. The CEO, executives, and staff alike carried with them the lesson of respect, the importance of valuing people for their abilities, and the power of quiet intelligence. The maid continued her work, her movements steady and purposeful. She did not seek recognition, yet her presence commanded it. She had demonstrated through action that skill, composure, and foresight are qualities that transcend social expectations. The CEO and executives had learned a subtle but profound lesson, that intelligence and talent cannot be measured by role, appearance, or status, and that respect is earned through action, not assumed through hierarchy. In the end, the office returned to its routines, but the memory of the chess game lingered. The lesson of humility, recognition, and the quiet power of intelligence became part of the office culture, a reminder that true skill is revealed through action, patience, and thoughtful execution. The CEO and executives carried this understanding forward, acknowledging that moments of unexpected brilliance can teach lessons that last far longer than any playful joke or casual amusement.